Yes, guys, welcome to the Tottenham Lens. So, the big question: why have Tottenham Hotspurs signed Sandro Tonali from Newcastle? Fantastic. Honestly, I'm truly amazed. I'm happy. Um, it's giving me vibes of the Pochettino era, and I'm truly excited about what he can bring to Tottenham Hotspurs. So, now that the deal's done, it's just literally just waiting on the work permit and things like that, which will basically get done. Um, let's get into it. So Sandro Tonali, he is a high intensity, vibrant midfielder, and he's gonna definitely be the heartbeat of Sandro of De Zerbi's system at Tottenham, the project. He's gonna be the face of it. He's 26 years old. He arrives at a time where he's truly in his peak of his career. He's had experience in Serie A, the Premier League with Newcastle, Champions League, international football, etc. He's technically gifted, tactically intelligent, physically dominant, and mentality resistant. You know, he's got a good mentality, and that's something that we need in the Tottenham dressing room. Obviously last year or last season, we were in a position of nearly getting relegated, and there was at times where you could see players' the mentality was broken. You could tell that they just wasn't there. So having someone like that in the dressing room, or there's someone like that on the pitch who's going to drive intensity, drive ambition, is truly what we need. So in terms of like Sandro Tonali's numbers, you're looking at 383 appearances, 35 goals, 41 assists, 28,522 career minutes, 79 Premier League appearances, 32 caps for Italy, and 32 Champions League appearances. Now, in terms of what Tonali is going to bring to us, we're now looking at elite ball progression. Now, we look at the Tottenham team last season, and I'm only going to go off last season because it's the closest season that we obviously finished with. We didn't really progress that ball up the pitch, and if we did, it was a lot of that side to side stuff. And it can be great, but we need midfielders and forward players who are going to go. We're going to start playing that ball vertically rather than horizontally. We need to be able to break lines, etc. And Tonali can do that through running through the lines with his ball carrying, or progressing that ball as playing it through, beating defensive line, beating midfield lines. He's quite press resistance. He can hold onto the ball long periods, which is good because if he's attracting 1, 2, 3 players on towards him, and he's able to keep hold of the ball, when he does release it, it means that there's gaps elsewhere. So again, that's something that it brings to the midfield, whereas before, we just couldn't really keep our possession last season. Now, in terms of he's got long range distribution, which is good because we're going to come up against teams, one, where we have De Zerbi's system, where he likes to play out from the back, he likes to bait the press, as we know. So where teams are going to be pushing up higher, we need midfielders like Tonali, who, he's excited and brave enough and technically gifted enough to receive the ball in those tight areas, lower down, closer towards our goal. And then this leaves attacking players to be able to receive the ball in behind, or combination passes between midfielders to then have a ball played in behind. So again, having a player who has that long range distribution is fantastically helps us, and it helps us massively again with wingers. Obviously we've been linked with the likes of Leao, Savinho. These are fast, techie wingers, and if he's able to get long balls into them where it leads them into 1v1 chances, or 1v1 situations against right backs, centre backs, left backs, etc., again, that puts us in good attacking chances, creates more opportunities for us. So this is what we need in terms of our midfielder. Again, with obviously we've signed Fernandes as well. with Tonali, them two together, it's giving me vibes of obviously Dembele and Wanyama. Obviously, in terms of their energy, work rate, in terms of the strength that they had, in terms of how they sort of quickly play the ball forward. Yeah, it's giving me those vibes, and I think next season we're going to see ourselves with a strong midfield, a real strong midfield. Again, he's tactically intelligent, and it goes back to what I was saying in terms of like there'll be times where he might just hold on to that ball a bit longer, but he's holding on to it because he's drawing players out, which then creates gaps. And this is what we need. We need midfielders who are not just thinking about, I'm just holding the ball and I want to just hold the ball and I just want it and I just want to drive forward. No, you need midfielders who are going, yeah, cool, I'm going to hold on the ball for that a little bit longer, knowing that I'm going to pull out players out of their position, knowing that there's a gap in behind, in the wide areas, etc. So this is the thing that he brings to it. And in terms of his defensive intensity as well, like, it's amazing because he honestly runs up and down the pitch. Like, honestly, I'd love to see his heat maps game per game, because with Tonali, he loses the ball. He could go on an attack, we lose the ball, and then he's back down the other end. And this is what we need. We need defense. In my, as being a coach, defense for me is not just about, yes, all right, cool, you got your left back and your right back and your centre backs. It's also about the players in front as well, the midfielders, the forwards, how they set the tone for the defensive intensity. And Tonali, he will definitely set that tone for the rest of the team. He will set that tone for the stadium. The fans will be going nuts because fans love, yes, attacking players, doing a skill and taking shots on goal and something to clap for, but they also love workhorses, guys who are going to run up and down the pitch, putting tackles. When you hear that clash of, when you're going to win the ball, fans love it. So he's going to bring that defensive intensity, but also he's going to bring leadership and experience. He's been in the game a while. Came up through the youth system of Brescia, went to AC Milan. He's been to Newcastle. He's got experience under his belt. So he's going to bring that leadership to the dressing room, leadership to the pitch, calmness when we need to be calm, but also the intensity when we need the intensity. That clear head, that clear thought. There's talks about him being, he can be quite quiet. But for me, a leader doesn't always have to constantly be speaking. Sometimes leaders, they show their leadership and experience by how they play, and the rest of the team vibe off of that. So that's another thing he brings to the team. But also, again, he has the ability to dictate tempo. Again, he's a massive workhorse, but there's times where he can go, you know what, let's just calm it down a bit, and then we'll pick up the pace again, catch the opposition on the off when we need to. Tonali, he thrives when receiving under pressure. This is his bread and butter. Breaking opposition lines, progressing with passes, controlling the possession, all those fundamental principles like De Zerbi has in his football philosophy, and the reason why he will fit into De Zerbi's, philosophy is because De Zerbi demands midfielders who can basically receive in tight spaces, which he can do, attract pressure. As I was saying, just holding that ball that's maybe just a little bit longer, just to bait players in, and then releasing it, progressing the ball to play vertically rather than horizontally, and controlling possession phases, but also he can counter press aggressively. Tonali he can play as a lone, deep lying defensive midfielder, but he also can play as an 8, or in a double pivot. He will dictate, manipulate space, and he's like the ideal conductor for us. So for me, I'm truly excited. I'm buzzing to see what this brings. Obviously, again, last season, a lot of us fans were quite depressed. Think that we're going to get relegated, had to put up with the type of football we were playing. It just was not great at all. But now, bringing in a a marquee signing like Tonali, it definitely sets the standard. You know, how does he improve Tottenham? Now, a midfield where it can feature the likes of Tonali, Fernandes, Bentancur, Bergvall, Sarr, and Gray instantly becomes one of the most sort of like balanced and technically complete units in our team. So what Tonali brings to that, he brings control and possession, defensive security. So that goes to me talking about not just thinking about the back four and let's say the goalkeeper, but also that defensive security in the middle of the pitch. Leadership for younger players, so the likes of Bergvall, the likes of Sarr, Gray, and elite passing range and greater tactical flexibility. You know, and where we like to talk about him being able to be, you know, he can play as, you know, a defensive midfielder. He can also make those driving runs into the other end of the box and score goals, like we've seen on occasion after occasion. So Tonali, he brings a lot to this team. And yeah, of course, we need more signings. And once we get those other signings in the attacking position, you're going to see why that Tonali signing makes more sense because of what he brings and how he's going to get the best out of the other attacking players that we have. So that's something that we need to obviously look forward, you know, that we're going to definitely look forward to, you know. Now, in terms of my final verdict, in terms of like wrapping up, you know, Tottenham have wanted genuine statement signings for a long time. And, you know, again, where we went through that period of obviously, let's say go back to Pochettino, we had Dembele, we had Wanyama, had Eriksen who could play in the middle, you had Dele Alli who could play in the middle. We had a strong basis of a midfield, but we just never had that real marquee signing that was going to sort of like take us to the next level. And, you know, with the signing, he's Premier League proven. You know, we don't have the Ndomboles, we don't have the Celsos who didn't have the experience. That, you know, they had a bit of talent about them, but we never, you know, we just never knew if they're going to make it. Like Danny Rose said, like, I don't want to be signing players that I have to constantly keep YouTubing, you know, or I don't know how to pronounce their names kind of thing. This is a Premier League proven player, you know, beginning of his prime, showing us that he can do it in the Premier League, showed that he can do it internationally, you know, perfect tactically for the Zerbi system. You know, he's got the leadership qualities required to elevate everyone around him. And, you know, the fact that if Spurs are serious about competing for major honours, you know, Sandro Tonali proves to be one of the most important signings in the club's modern history. And this, honestly, this is going to be exciting. I'm buzzing. Now, you know, we've got Fernandes under our belt. We've got Robertson. We've got Van Hecke. We've got Marcus Sinelli. We've got, obviously, Martin de Bergfa. I'm truly buzzing in terms of what Tottenham's going to be offering up next season. So if you like the video, like, subscribe, hype, and I'm going to do another video, and I'll be doing this one more on Fernandes. And I'll be doing some other bits and pieces in terms of transfer rumors and things like that. So honestly, guys, like it, drop your opinion in the comments, and look forward to doing more videos and, you know, talking to you guys a bit more.